Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. While this truth will do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Unto you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. And I'm entitled this one, The Incoming Economic Collapse Plan. Going into why this economy is collapsing, why this society that we call America is collapsing. Ultimately is because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai has put it upon the spirit of the so-called white man, which is really Esau Edom, so he could bring in that new digital system that's going to be ran by this, the so-called stable coin, which really it's a CBDC, which is a digital dollar that's going to be the new form of buying and selling, but ultimately is all a catalyst to the mass implementation of the MOTB. So this devil, so-called white man, can have full control over the population because he already has control of the resources of all these different nations, but he wants that ultimate squeeze, that ultimate control of people by implanting that MOTB, which is a micro chip, either on your right hand or on your forehead, so you could know that you've bowed down to this beast system, which at first it will be gradual, it'll be a volunteer, but then it's going to get to the point where people resist it so much that he's going to have to force it upon you, and ultimately the elect of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai are not going to take it because they have been already reserved from the foundation of the earth to not take it. So only those who aren't part of the elect of the nation of Israel are going to take it, which are the 2/3 of the nation of Israel here in America that are prophesied to suffer that second death, ultimately for bowing the knee to the so-called white man, bowing the knee to the NWO. But ultimately because they weren't part of the elect, so Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai didn't put it upon their spirit to resist, because you are going to have a lot of heathens, so-called white people, so-called Chinese, Arabians that aren't going to take it, but ultimately they don't matter because they're not an Israelite. And even, if they were Israelite, but if they're not part of the elect, it doesn't even matter. And ultimately majority of our people, they know what the MOTB is. They know that it's the micro chip, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to take it, because you got a lot of Israelites that know that they're Israelites, that know what the MOTB is, but they're not warning their people. They're telling their congregation that it's sin, that it's the image of Caesar Borgia, that it's white women, and all these different false philosophies and false breakdowns that they're pushing upon their people because they sold out to the so-called white man. So when it gets made mandatory, they're going to realize, they fucked up. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So ultimately the elect know what this devil's plan is, because you got a lot of people wondering why this economy is collapsing, why the dollar is tanking, why it is being done away with, because the so-called white man, he has his plans for the NWO, which is going to be ran by a digital currency, a stable coin, a CBDC. And at first it may be just digital dollars, but then eventually it's going to get to the point where he's going to have everybody have to take that MOTB to be able to keep participating in society, to have a job, to rent an apartment, to buy a house, to buy groceries and go to the store and pretty much buying and selling. which once it gets to the point where people aren't able to buy and sell, they're not able to pay their rent, they're not able to go to the grocery store and get groceries and buy food, and you got their little ones crying because they haven't ate in days, that's when majority of the people on the planet Earth are going to bow the knee. Because especially these people here in America, they're so used to having 5 meals a day, snacking in between. So majority of these Babylonians, these Americans, they're already through. They're already going to be taken by Satan devices. Because Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai gave them up to this devil, because majority of the people upon the planet Earth, especially here in America, they're wicked as all hell. You see the way they conduct themselves, the way they behave, completely contrary to the scripture. So they're rightfully they for lack of better words, the judgment that they're about to receive from Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai is deserved. From famine, pestilences, being taken by these different plagues, starving to death, being put to death in these detention centers, especially our people, the 2/3, because they refuse to repent to Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. So that's why majority of our people, the 2/3 in these heathens, are going to get taken by Satan devices. This is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And that's why it says rich and poor, because that middle class has pretty much been eliminated. So it is either going to be rich and poor, which majority of the people up on the planet Earth, they're becoming poor. It's a very small number that is rich, that hasn't really gotten affected by this inflation, by the rise of goods, but even these so-called rich people, these Edomites that own businesses that are millionaires, they're going to have to take that MOTB too, because they have all this wealth, all these assets, and once this devil collapses this system, they're going to want those assets back. And since they're going to be brought down to zero, Edom's going to offer them a portion of all these assets, a portion of the millions or billions that they have. But ultimately, they're going to have to take that MOTB. And then you also have the poor, which majority of the poor here in America are the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the true Israelites. It is going to take nothing for Jake to go down to these sea-hipping stations, and bow the knee. Because ultimately, Jake doesn't have nothing for them to be offered a universal basic income, to be offered a ration of food every month for taking this MOTB, is going to take Jake, no effort whatsoever to go down there to these sea-hipping stations and bow the knee. And ultimately it's going to be that micro sea-hip that's going to be either implemented on your right hand or on your forehead, and that word mark, that's going into charagma, that chai-sai stigma in the Greek. And then you're going to have that other mark that the elect are going to have written about in Ezekiel chapter 9 and verse 4, which is that mark of exemption. You're going to have the 2/3 of Jake take that MOTB, that mark, that charagma, and then also you're going to have the elect have that Tawa, which is going to be that mark of exemption, which is going to lead to them to not take it, to be delivered by Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai, to be delivered by the angels, to be delivered by Yahweh Shai. Verse 17, and no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, the charagma, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So ultimately that's what this devil's plan is to put, because he's already putting that squeeze on these people. But how much more when you're no longer able to work a job, you're no longer able to pay your rent, you're no longer able to buy food and sell, when you're no longer to buy groceries, that's when people are really going to fold. Because right now everything's good. You can still go to the grocery store, you can still go to McDonald's, you can still work your 9 to 5 and go to the nightclubs and the bars during the weekend, go to the sports events, to the baseball game and to the boxing events. You can still turn on Netflix. But once all these things get taken away, that's when these people are going to be sighing and crying for a solution. And that's when this devil the so-called white man is going to offer that solution. He's going to offer that savior, which is going to be that MOTB, the micro C-HIP. That's why majority of these people up on the planet Earth are going to take it, because they're so used to the conveniences of America. They're so used to the convenience that Babylon the Great has pushed out throughout the four corners of the earth. Cell phones, Netflix, Wi-Fi, internet. So it's going to take nothing for these people to bow the knee to this beast system. This is Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. So that's why Esau Edom scrambling to get his NWO up and running, because he knows that he has a short time. He sees the chariots. He sees that Yahushua is on his way back. That's why he's trying so hard to get it up and running. He's building up all these AI infrastructure systems, all these AI warehouses, building all these micro C-HIP warehouses that are building the conductors, because the infrastructure is pretty much set up. He just has to cause, the economic collapse, the crash of the dollar, which he's pretty much already doing. That's why you have a mass inflation at an all-time high, people being laid off. He's putting that squeeze on these people to the point where people are no longer going to have jobs. They're not going to be able to afford rent. They're going to be homeless. They're not going to be able to buy food. And once it gets so bad that these people are going to be crying out for a solution, and he's going to bring that solution, which is going to be the MOTB, because he's already coming down with that great wrath. He's coming down hard on the Northern Kingdom, on the so-called Mexicans, so-called Venezuelans, so-called, Salvadorians and Colombians. And now he's starting to come down on the Southern Kingdom, over there in Washington, D.C., so-called Negroes, so-called Haitians, and so-called Jamaicans. And now he's starting to send these martial law troops over there to Chicago, and he's pretty much sending them to all these major cities because something big is about to happen. His economy is on his way out, so he's setting up all these National Guard troops to be in place for when all hell breaks loose. He's going to have that order out of chaos ready. But once he makes his move, that's when Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to raise that standard on his elect. He's going to deliver his elect. Some of the elect are going to get spiritual powers, like it says in Isaiah 59. That standard is going to be lifted to the elect. This is Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. So ultimately the prudent, which today will be the hopeful elect, we foresee the evil. We foresee what this devil's plans are, that the micro C-HIP everybody, to come down with that great wrath, with that martial law, to cause Jacob's trouble to just go, full on, all hell breaking loose. But only the elect foresee the visions. They foresee the prophecies and they believe in it. But also they believe in the saving power of Yahweh Shemel Shai. But the rest of our people, the 2/3, and even these Israelites that know that they're Israelites, they don't foresee the evil. They don't believe in Jacob's trouble. They don't believe that the micro C-HIP is the MOTB. They don't believe that America is going to be destroyed by missiles. So that's why ultimately majority of our people, the 2/3, they're going to be taken by these things. They're going to be taken by the economic collapse. They're going to be taken when the dollar crashes and all hell breaks loose, because they don't foresee the evil. And that's ultimately why it says the simple pass on and are punished. That's why our people, the 2/3, are going to be punished by the devil, Esau, even the so-called white man. They're going to be taken to these detention centers and bow the knee and take the micro C-HIP. Ultimately, because they didn't foresee it, because Yahweh Shemel Shai gave them the spirit of deep sleep. But the elect, they're gonna have these things revealed onto them, because Yahweh Shemel Shai left a remnant, so they ain't bow the knee to the devil. This is Amos chapter 3 and verse 7. Surely the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shai will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. So Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to reveal the prophecies. He's going to reveal the visions. He's going to reveal himself, and through him, delivering the elect. Because Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai left that remnant. He left that 1/3 that he is going to deliver. That he's going to keep him from the hour of temptation. That he's going to keep him from taking an MOTB. But that's only a small remnant. That's a drop out of a bucket, while the rest of our people, the 2/3, which is a huge number, they're going to be taken by this devil. They're going to be taken when all hell breaks loose. They're going to be taken when the MOTB gets made mandatory. And ultimately there's a very severe punishment, a very severe judgment for taking the Qaraqla. Like it says right here in Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9, this is what the repercussions of taking that MOTB, the microcehib, is going to be. This is Revelation chapter 14 and verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his right hand, verse 10, the same shall drink of the wine. And Revelation chapter 14 and verse 10, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture in the cup of his indignation. And that word indignation means righteous anger. So Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai is justified for doing this to those who take the MOTB. Continuing on, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the Lamb. And who is the Lamb? That's going into Yahweh Shai, who everybody ignorantly called Jesus Christ. Because once this devil really mass implements that MOTB, that's when he's going to have to send Yahweh Shai back to deliver his elect, but also to bring this devil down and destroy America through the way of the intercontinental ballistic missiles, which that's what's going to cause that lake of fire. That's what's going to cause that second death over here in America. Because America is Babylon the Great, written about in the scriptures, that's prophesied to be destroyed by fire. And this is where 2/3 of Jake are going to get destroyed for bowing the knee to the devil, taking the MOTB. They're going to have that grievous sword, that cancer, for bowing the knee to this devil. But also they're going to get hit by those missiles. They're going to get destroyed along with the angels in the chariots, who everybody inwardly calls UFOs. That's what the 2/3 of Jake, they're going to bow the knee to this devil, have coming. Is nothing but destruction. But also there's that great deliverance that's going to take place. Because ultimately the elect aren't going to bow the knee to the devil. This is Revelation chapter 3 and verse 10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the earth, Salaki, upon all the world, which that word world, that's going into, I think, cosmos. Let me check it real quick just to make sure. It's that word world, that's going into the entire world. That's not going into just, the age, or, because there's 3 different Greek words for that word world. That word world, that's going into Salak is oikumene, which means the inhabited earth, the whole inhabited earth, the inhabitants of earth. So this MOTB is going to be offered up, to the whole world, and then eventually it's going to get to the point where it's going to be made mandatory. But the elect ultimately aren't going to take it, because Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai is going to keep them from taking it. He's going to reserve that remnant, which consists of the 1/3, starting with the 144,000, and the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude of believers that are prophesied to receive deliverance for not bowing the knee to the devil. But that's pretty much the point. I pray this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all learned this truth from who do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude, until I say Shalom.